Connecting. Hey there, Phyllis. Hey, Chris. Mona. Welcome. Hi, Gail Grady. Nice to see you. Can you folks hear me? I'll wait for a little bit and let some folks join up, and then we'll do this. Hi, Christy. Thanks. Hey there, Chris Ray. Jay, you trying to get on my good list. So, while we're waiting on people to get in, maybe we can do a little, or I can do a little bit of housekeeping. For those that are new, I'm Marlon Weems. I am the publisher of the Journeyman newsletter. Um, just a little bit of background. Before I started trying to become a writer, I spent about 30 years working in finance on about half of it in the South, in Arkansas. I started the first Black-owned investment firm in Arkansas, and then after about 15 years in the business there, I um, folded my tent up and went to work on Wall Street for about the same length of time. Jay Brinkley, welcome to the room, man. I know Brinkley. All right. So you know what I'm talking about, Jay, in terms of, and we're talking about I started my business in, I want to say 1995, 1994. So yeah, that nobody was rolling out the red carpet for me. Let's just put it that way. So Mona, just so you know, the topic tonight, the thing that I'll eventually, we'll get to it, is just to talk a little bit about TikTok and kind of what my, um, I guess, thesis, for lack of a better word, in terms of what's happening. I've been talking about this since, I guess, shortly after, or maybe a little bit before the election, and it's kind of rolling out. I mean, it's not surprising to me to see exactly what's happening. So we'll get to that in a second. I would just say, if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to the newsletter. If it's something that fits in the budget, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. And everything that I write is free. A lot of people do paywalls. I don't do that because it kind of, in my view, it defeats the purpose. If folks can't read what I'm writing, then how are they going to know whether I know what I'm talking about? So that's kind of my approach, and I'll leave it to you, if to determine if you think there's some value there. So a couple of days ago, again, oh wow, almost 50 folks here. Welcome to everyone. A couple of days ago, just to, oh wait, before I go too much further, my wife, you can kind of see her in the background. Shannon is the person that really supports me in kind of doing this little project. I'm obviously not doing it for the money, but she is the person that helps me set everything up and make sure, my lighting doesn't scare the hell out of everybody, and all of that stuff. So I just want to tip my hat to her. Um, and now, so um, a couple of days ago, I I did a similar event to this, and we talked about one of these Friday news dumps, after 5 o'clock kind of thing, where I think it was Punch Bowl News that broke the story on the well, it was predominantly a document that was the House Ways and Means Committee, and I talked about it. And just know, and you can, if you're on Substack on the app, you can, find me and just kind of, check out my feed. But Republicans are up to no good. I am here to tell you. And so I just thought it was important to have maybe one last conversation before the inevitable happens, I guess, now in just what, a little more than 12 hours. The world's getting ready to I think change significantly, but it's not like we don't know what's coming. So I'm not really I think in 2016, people were a little bit fearful, but we kind of know what these guys are up to. I would just say they're quite a bit more organized than they were in 17, I guess, when he was inaugurated. But I'm not so sure um, a lot of the things that they're threatening us with are really going to happen. But if they only do a nth of what they want to do, we're we're in for a rough ride. So anyway, let's talk about TikTok. So if you've been watching the last since this time yesterday, I guess TikTok, shut their service down, scared the shit out of everybody. Now I'm going to tell you folks, I'm just keeping it real. And I used to run a trading desk, and I'm trying to reform myself, but I curse a lot. I say bad words, and so I hope I don't offend uh, too many of you. But I some of this stuff is just very hard for me to sort of censor. And for example, I'm in North Carolina. You're right, Jay. Um, so I just saw today that one of the congressmen from North Carolina is about to introduce a bill to get rid of the Department of Education, and this is something that Republicans have been talking about. If you've watched for any length of time, you might remember a few presidential cycles ago that I want to say it was Rick Perry that just got all tripped up because somebody asked him, well, what are the first things you get rid of? And he couldn't name like three of them, but one of them was the Department of Education. And it just, I mean, for me personally, my daughter's a senior in college. My son is a freshman in college. So that kind of thing, it will have an effect on maybe my son to the extent that, I mean, he's on a 4-year full ride computer engineering. So, there is that potential for them to mess with his scholarships. Um, but otherwise, I just don't understand the people that vote for this because Republicans got kids going to school too, and they're not all going to be able to go to private schools. So I'm just trying to really, I just, it puzzles me, and I'm very interested to see how far they take this because you're talking about getting rid of everything from Head Start to school lunches. If you've got a child that, a special needs child that um, and not just so much special ed, but where kids have to have like some adjustments to their curriculum. Maybe they need to sit up front in class, so they you know thank you, Jay. The Learns Act is a prime example, and I'm from Arkansas, for folks who don't know. And so I, it's just going to be interesting to me to see if Republicans who have children in school are just going to roll over and let this happen. Won't be surprised if they do because they've been doing it so far. So anyway, I'll try not to digress. Back to TikTok. Um, I guess by way of just laying the groundwork. If you recall, during Trump's first term, he was really gung ho for getting rid of TikTok or banning it, whatever you want to call it. And he was just all fired up to go at China. And that's kind of where this whole drumbeat started, if my memory is correct. So fast forward to the last election cycle, presidential election cycle. Um, by the first of this year, Trump was about to run out of money. I mean, if you watched just the fundraising and who, sort of who had money and who didn't, Trump was really, his campaign was really in trouble. It was something that was not a secret. And it looked like, I mean, Kamala Harris was raising money hand over fist. Um, well, Biden was earlier in the year. So in March, um, and this is a person that I don't understand exactly why nobody is talking about Jeff Yass, Yass. Jeff Yass, and I know of him because I was in the investment business for so long, and I did some business in Pennsylvania. Um, just Jeff Yass is the founder, and I guess he's still the CEO, I think, of a company, an investment firm in Pennsylvania called Susquehanna. And if I don't know if there's anybody in here from Pennsylvania, but there's like the Susquehanna River, and it's a common business name. Susquehanna is one of the largest. I would characterize them as a quantitative firm. They are not like T. Rowe Price or somebody like that. That's a mutual fund or something. These guys are um, are dealing in algorithms and that sort of thing. Not to get too deep in the weeds. The point though about Jeff Yaz is that he is the wealthiest individual in the state of Pennsylvania. So Jeff Yaz, uh, big time Republican, but always a never Trumper. Always. I guess, during the early days of the election, I think he was backing DeSantis in Florida. That was kind of the horse he was riding. But, DeSantis kind of crashed and burned, which didn't really surprise anybody, I don't think. Um, and in March actually like the 1st of March, Jeff Yass invited Trump. It was Jeff Yass, and I don't know the guy's name, but it's easy to find. Whoever the CEO is of the Club for Growth. And if you've been following Republican politics for any length of time, the Club for Growth. I mean, these are the guys that want to, like, drown the government in the bathtub and, make it this big and, basically get rid of regulations, all that kind of stuff. So the Club for Growth and Jeff Yass invite Trump to a donor event. That happens on March 1st. On March 7th, all of a sudden, Trump likes TikTok. Now, why would something like that happen? Let me explain. Aside from owning a multi-billion-dollar investment firm, Susquehanna invested in ByteDance like over 10 years ago when it was just a little startup. Okay. ByteDance is the company that owns TikTok. So these guys invested in that company when it was, not much more than a business plan. And so now here we are, fast forward, we got this whole situation with TikTok. There was a point not long ago that ByteDance did a valuation on itself, and it estimated. Edward, this is live, my friend. Jay, this is live. Now, just as an aside, once this is done, Substack, and this is one of the reasons I use it. They will immediately download or forward to me, a recording of the whole event, which is something that I'll, make some comments. Some of the stuff that I'm saying here, I'll provide some links so you can check it out for yourself. And it'll go out first to paid subscribers. And I'm still trying to figure that out, like what's fair. Like I said, I like everybody to, see or at least read everything I write. This is a little different, but ultimately everybody will have access to it. It even goes on my YouTube page, which I've really not used that much, but Substack is just sort of blasting it out there. So it goes to my YouTube page. It also goes out as a podcast, The Journeyman Unfiltered, which you can find pretty much. I think it's on every podcast platform. So um, where was I? So ByteDance valued itself at $300 billion. A lot of people will tell you it's probably the most successful startup, maybe in history. So Jeff Yass, through his companies, Susquehanna made this investment, but he owns Susquehanna. Um, their stake in ByteDance is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $30 billion. So he's got plenty of skin in this game. And so when you think about why would a guy like that go from supporting everybody but Trump to suddenly being on the Trump train? Well, he got 30 billion reasons to be on the Trump train, and that's what's up. So all of a sudden, Trump meets with this guy. Next thing you know, Trump is saying that no, you know what? Now that I think about it, TikTok ain't the problem. It's really Facebook. That kind of can explain what's going on with Zuckerberg and why he's acting all weird and suddenly bending the knee and all of this stuff, right? So um, I guess back in November, I wrote about this because I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. Trump is going to make sure that TikTok does not go under. And I wrote about it, like I say, in November, just speculating. I got no inside information, but I can count. And and so these guys are, I think Jeff Yass and his wife poured somewhere around $100 million into a variety of Republican super PACs and so on. So the point is, and I've heard a lot of people just over the last 24 hours say, oh, Trump's trying to bribe these guys. When TikTok sort of, shut things off and then they like, bowing down to Trump. I mean, that's the game. Any CEO who's got any sense and is within any proximity to Trump knows that the way to sort of get on his radar, the game is you got to bow down. You got to be subservient. You got to bend the knee and say good things about Trump and so on. But when it comes down to it, Trump isn't bribing anybody. He's already been bribed. This is just me. I mean, Trump's already been paid. And the deal is we're going to help you get in the White House. And here's what you're going to do. And if you look at it, he's doing exactly, what he's been paid for. Let me just pause for a minute. So, DC is asking, how do we get young folks and disengaged or low info voters to see the grift? This is going to sound harsh. I think we are well past that. Now, just for the folks who really weren't old enough to experience what happened, 10 years ago when Trump got elected the first time, I got some sympathy because maybe they don't quite, know what's getting ready to happen. But for these folks that are my age that I know, and I'm sure everybody in this room knows some people that or maybe you got, I don't know, in laws, brothers, sisters, whatever, that are still voting for this mess. They got to find out. They just really do. I just don't see that. And this is my personal position. I'm done trying to convince folks and telling them and persuading and, oh, look at this side. Mm-mm. No, you know what? Okay, if you if you think tariffs make the price of eggs go down, hide and watch because it's beyond ridiculous now. So That's you know I also I'm really kind of mad at Democrats right now too. And this is a little bit aside from TikTok. We were talking earlier about this whole situation with what Republicans are about to do or try to do in reconciliation. And there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to pull off all this stuff. I mean, we're talking about getting rid of the mortgage deduction. That is a good way to get the pitchforks coming out. Because everybody that owns a house has that deduction, and it's not just, radical liberals. So what I'm mad about though is that Punchbowl dropped that story Friday. I've written about it a lot. I mean, just or commented at least, and I'm just a guy on an island in North Carolina, right? The bulk of that whole document, I mean, it's 50, I think 51 pages, and I think the first 20 pages of it are out of the Ways and Means Committee, right? Well, the Democrats on the Ways and Means Committee, and I looked like last night, they haven't posted on Blue Sky since like last Tuesday. So I'm trying to understand. I'm upset. Why ain't they mad? So I just don't know. I mean, I have a part of the theory I have is we got a bunch of guys that are just and I say that not gender, but just people. We got folks in these positions, and I'm sure they mean well, but they're just not athletes, and we need athletes right now. We need folks like AOC and Jasmine Crockett that can get in the game with these guys. And you're right, C. Jacobs. Yeah, they sleepwalking. And Hakeem Jeffries, when I see him, I mean, he's impressive. I just don't know what the strategy is, because if it's me, and I'm not a politician, but you'd be tired of me on TV. I'm here to tell you, these guys it's almost like they have forgotten what they're supposed to be mad about, you know? So I just don't, and maybe it'll change. I don't know what they're waiting on, but when Republicans drop, when something comes out where Republicans are talking about taking everything away from everybody, we're talking about the child credit, tax credit, uh, taking away the tax exempt status on municipal bonds. Now, you may not think you own municipal bonds, but if you work for a state government, if you work for, city of whatever, if you got a pension fund, I guarantee you a lot of your portfolio is going to be built around a certain number of securities. And you're talking about taking away the tax exempt status of municipal bonds. That's $1 trillion market. These guys, I don't even I don't think they're going to be able to do it, but they're talking about it. And that is just crazy, right? And it's not just that. It's anything to do with anything green. They want to get rid of that. So they want to totally unwind the Inflation Reduction Act. And I'll post this again, I guess, because whenever I do one of these, I'll make some comments and it goes out, and I'll put some links so people can see for themselves. And if you follow me on Substack or on Blue Sky, I'm there as well. Um, you'll be able to find it, but it's a scary document because it's stuff that for years nobody's ever said, oh, let's let's get rid of the mortgage deductions, and then we can get $10 billion out of that. All of this, by the way, is so that they can come up with what they call pay fors for the $5 trillion tax break they want to give billionaires. And not for nothing, and I know we're getting away from TikTok, but you need to know this because you may not think it affects you. I don't, even if there's anybody in this room, if you're making $1 million, get ready. because they're talking about messing with your property taxes and every other thing. They're talking about taking away the deduction for your kids. Oh, they're talking about you got a kid on scholarship. They're talking about making the scholarship a tax event. So if your kids, like my son is actually getting a full ride. I mentioned it earlier. So at North Carolina State, it's about 30 grand a year. So they're trying to make it like he's like a guy making 30 grand a year, and we're going to tax that. So that means if you've got a kid that if they're successful in doing this, if you have a kid that's getting Pell Grants and a combination of stuff, not loans, but grant, like scholarships, they're talking about making the scholarships used for tuition taxable as income. So what that means is if you're getting 30 grand, you're not really getting 30 grand because it's going to get taxed, which means that kid's going to have to go out and get a loan. Yeah, Tyronda, they're crazy. So, I just think they're gonna try a whole lot of things, and it's gonna come at you real freaking quick. So get ready. My suggestion would be what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm not going to turn the TV on. I'm not looking at none of this stuff. You know what I'm going to do? If you look at my feed, you're going to see a whole lot of Martin Luther King, and you ain't going to hear nothing about what Trump did or, because it's going to be um, a laundry list, probably an avalanche of executive, orders and all this kind of stuff. Edward, yes, I do remember David Stockman, Reagan's OMB. Thanks for making me remember how old I am. um, so yeah, I'm with you, Tracy K. Media blackout tomorrow. That's what I mean. It's almost been like that in my house ever since the election. I literally unplugged from. I used to use YouTube TV, which I liked, but I was really only watching cable news, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm off that. I'm off that. Um, I do, and plus I got so many streaming services. I don't need to sit up and watch these folks. A lot of times I know what they're going to talk about before they actually talk about it. So, um, by the way, I haven't really said so, but I appreciate you guys. I mean, my gosh, there are 182 folks in here. Um, I'm surprised, to be honest, but I just feel like um, how can I don't want this to sound like I think I'm all like, that because I'm not. But I spent 30 years in finance. So during that time, I'm old enough. I was a trader during the stock market crash in 1987. I was around for the internet bubble bursting. That was like in 2001, I guess. I was working in New York on 9/11, um, the blackout in New York, all that. So I've been around a bit. And then, of course, 2006 and so on, when everything went to hell. I was working on Wall Street then. I literally was doing business with Lehman when Lehman went under. So I've seen some stuff, and now I guess you could say I'm semi-retired. Um, and thanks to technology like this, I can just kind of plug in and talk to folks. I started my Substack during during the pandemic because everybody's on lockdown, and I would just be like doing I would be doing what I'm doing now, except my poor children were like almost like hostages and they had to listen to me. And so at some point my wife was like, you know what, maybe you should write that down. And so so that was kind of how my newsletter got started. And again, my wife's way smarter than me. So that helped everybody. DC graduated high school in 84. You try to act like you're old, dude. 1976 over here. Maureen, my garden is sustainable. Oh, you know what? Um, that's smart. I actually we have a side business, and we sell tropical plants. So we love the plant life around here. Um, Tracy, 1983. So 1983, um, that was when I started working for. Oh, this is interesting. I started working for a company that is the well, at the time, I think it still might be the largest investment bank not located on Wall Street in Little Rock, Arkansas, if you can believe it. They took Walmart public. They took Tyson Foods public. All right, Tyronda, I see you. 1978. Um, Company's called Stevens Incorporated with a PH. So they hired me in 1983. I was the first black broker that they had ever hired in 1983, y'all. Not 1923, 1983. So um, the interesting aside from that, okay, Edward Holmes, you got me, bro. Went to school with Dick Parsons. Rest in peace. He just passed away. Um, so the thing about Stevens that is interesting is, and Warren Stevens, you might want to look this guy up. Trump just named him the ambassador to the UK. I used to work with this guy, and he's it's really interesting. I think that was one of those things because I just don't see him being like MAGA. That's just not the kind of guy he is. This was He's been the CEO of that business for probably 20 years at least, I think. And, Trump needed money. They got money. These guys were billionaires when there weren't that many billionaires. And so, yeah, check out Warren Stevens and Stevens Incorporated. I suspect that company might be in the news a little bit over the next several years. But I'm going to write about them. By the way, I'm writing a book too, but that's a different conversation. Um, so back to TikTok, and maybe we should kind of wind up, or I'll open it up for whatever you guys want to talk about. I just think what's going on with TikTok, and I had some conversations today, and that was really the reason I got on because people were saying, "Oh, TikTok's been banned." Oh, this. Here's what happened. Here's why I think Biden kind of let it go the way he did. You have to remember the Supreme Court made their ruling on TikTok. Think it was I think it was Friday, maybe it was Thursday. But basically, the ruling was that, this law banning, it's really not a ban, it's a forced sale. And if they don't find a buyer in a certain in a certain period of time, then the company can't, operate in the US. So it's a low key ban because only because they didn't really give TikTok. This is a big company. They didn't give TikTok enough time to find and it's not a you know God help us if Elon Musk buys it, but it's not really a thing where one guy writes a check. Okay, this is an enormous company, so they really did not have enough time. Uh, Edward, I'm not sure what you mean. It's an example of how tariffs will work. How so? Are you talking about Trump? I'm not sure. Why don't you tell me what you mean by that? Yeah, Tyronda, it's a little hostile, and I'll tell you why it's hostile. Um, I'm gonna AOC made a comment on this maybe in the last couple of days. You know, if you were around in 2016, if you're banning TikTok and not looking at Facebook, what the hell's going on? Because Facebook was allowing any Russian propaganda unit that wanted to. They were stuff. Guys were paying for ads in rubles. I mean, come on. So if you're really worried about national security, then instead of just focusing on one company, maybe write some policy. C. Jacobs asks, "What are the chances other countries respond in kind, and force the U.S. to do the same?" Well, I think to some extent the UK has has done something, and to and I don't know, this is a lot of that happened, like I said, right after the 2016 election, because Facebook was allowing people to come in and basically data mine all our private information. So if you're worried about TikTok, how are you not worried about Facebook? How? Because we already, I mean, there's, according to AOC, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, representative from New York, according to her, when and I want to say she, whatever committee she was on, she said at the time they were looking at this bill, they bring everybody into a meeting. Yes, Cambridge Analytica, exactly. They bring everybody into, some sort of national security meeting, and they lay out the case. According to AOC, she was shocked at the lack of real evidence that TikTok was really doing anything. And it wasn't just her, from the way she tells it. So the point being, they just targeted TikTok because Trump wanted to get at China. Okay. So the question is, if we're worried about social media companies and how they handle the data, yours and mine, then why aren't we just writing some policy to deal with that, instead of whack-a-moling this one company and forcing them to do something? So that's kind of the nub of what, the question. um so at the end of the day, I think it's a situation where 4 or 5 years ago Trump wanted to get at China, and China was really doing well with TikTok in the United States. Easy target. Fast forward to today, to a large extent, TikTok might have helped Trump. Isn't TikTok banned in China? No, TikTok is actually owned by a Chinese company. ByteDance owns TikTok, John H. So no, it's not banned. It's not even banned in the U.S. necessarily. Now, what Trump is talking about doing right now. Sorry, folks. What he's doing now, it's the we've seen it, taking credit. He's taking credit for Gaza, for goodness sakes. Um, so now he's taking credit for TikTok, and he says tomorrow one of the first things he's going to do is, um, I guess, unban TikTok. I don't know exactly, and he's even suggesting that the U.S. government should own part of, I guess, TikTok. Um, I'm not sure how that happens. It's not out of the realm of reason for the United States government to own, um, a private, some part of a private company. You saw it happen a few times during the financial crisis with, like, GM. They needed a bailout, and it came in the form of somewhere, um, I guess, in the neighborhood of $60 billion that our government put into GM, and they had an equity stake. I actually was involved, in a minor way, in placing some of that deal. Um, Now that's different because it is a U.S. company, so I'm not exactly sure, but I think probably um, the approach they're probably going to take is this: Congress is going to do whatever Trump tells them to do. The House, I mean. So it wouldn't surprise me if Trump does an executive order, gives TikTok 180 days or some period of time to find a buyer, and maybe somewhere in the middle of all that they just repeal the law. I mean, Congress can do that. That's the easy way. People don't want anything to do with Musk or Zuck, period. Tyronda, you could not be more right. I have to use Facebook to an extent. for my little business. But other than that, mm-mm. it's it's the devil. Hold on. Um, I saw a question there somewhere. So why shouldn't the U.S. own it? Maureen, well, possibly the biggest reason is not for sale. I mean, there's no reason why um, the U.S. government couldn't own it, but they aren't. I mean, the Chinese government owns ByteDance owns TikTok, and they're saying it's not for sale. So that's kind of the, you know, loggerheads, if you will. So I don't know how it happens. Um, I did see that Trump is meeting with Xi. I'm sure this is going to be part of the topic of conversation, but I just don't. I don't know. Um, Edward, again, I keep saying, y'all, the U.S. can't force a company to buy something that isn't for sale, and as long as they are saying we are not for sale, they're basically calling Trump's bluff to that extent, right? So I don't know, but I do know there's some big U.S. billionaire money behind ByteDance in the form of Susquehanna, Jeff Yazz. So somewhere in the middle of all that, they're going to figure it out. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I mean, I like TikTok, but I don't use it a lot. I do know a lot of people make their living on that, so to that extent, I'm sympathetic. But it's kind of a mess if you really think about it. So I don't know. Um, I don't know how they work it out, but I know this: uh, to the extent that Trump's got anything to do with it, Trump's already gotten paid, so he's got to come through. That's why I made the title of this: a Lannister almost always pays his debts. Trump don't pay all the time, but when he owes billionaires, he comes through. Almost, I can't think of a situation where Trump hooked up with a billionaire and didn't do what they wanted. Um, I'm sorry. Who is this? Carol Q. I'm sorry. I really am. Carol says, twice now I've tuned into your live, and twice I've had to open a bottle of wine. Um, Cheers, Carol. That's all I can say. I mean, I don't, I don't make the news. I just report it. uh, folks, I mean, I just kind of feel like, the last time we were all just sort of stressed out and just, had to go get therapy over this stuff. Look, it's going to be what it's going to be. They're not going to kill us. Well, let's hope. um, what I think, to the extent that we can do anything about any of this, is we got to ride the hell out of these Democrats, and we cannot have, um, and Nancy Pelosi. No disrespect, she's been great, but come on, how in the hell do you push AOC out of the way and again, Jared Conley, nice guy, like him, knowledgeable, knows his job. He's in his 70s and he's got throat cancer. I mean, that man needs to be spending time with his family, to be honest. In my opinion, that's what I'd be doing. So I just don't understand the um, desire. Well, folks do not want to give up power. They just don't. And Democrats are no different than anybody else. And so I just think, these folks got to get out of the way and let some thoroughbreds run with this stuff. Um, and that is something we can control. That's something, we can't control what these Republicans do, because they're not even worried about their own people. So I guess we can do this, and hopefully I can help. I have an opinion, and I try to be right. If I'm wrong, and somebody tells me, I try to correct. Um, But yeah, that's sort of what where we are, and it's not the best place in the world to be, but we'll live, we'll get through it. So I'm just going to say this, and it's almost 10:30. I know folks got to go to work. Well, it's Martin Luther King Day. Maybe you don't have to go to work. I don't have to go to work anyway. I work at home. um, just kind of wrapping it up. uh, my guess, if you love TikTok, you're okay. um, Keep your eye on these Republicans, because man, it's going to be something tomorrow. Now I'm going to post. Follow me on Blue Sky and follow me on Substack. I'm going to maybe repost some stuff. I wrote something, maybe, shoot, I think it might have even been before the election, about all this business about deporting 20 million people. Not going to happen. First of all, there's not even 20 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. So if they're talking about 20 million folks, they're talking about people who are American citizens. Okay. Um, but I don't know. I think we've only got maybe 1,000 or so um, Border Patrol agents. So they don't have the infrastructure to do the things that they're threatening to do. So what you can expect is this: you're going to see a whole bunch of shock and awe tomorrow, a whole bunch of, ooh, look what we're doing. They're going to have Fox News covering them, dragging people down the street, or, stopping folks in the airport, or doing okay, expect that. But in the end, it's not going to be millions of people getting thrown out of the country, because they just don't have the infrastructure now. And Tracy, you're right, they're incompetent. they they don't have, look at these people they're putting in charge of shit. They don't know what they're doing. so so um what you can expect is the grift. So what I mean by that is this: when Tom Homan, the border czar, when his name was announced, the private prison stocks went through the roof, because they know all these folks are not going to get thrown out of the country. What they are going to do is they're going to detain a shitload of them, and they're going to be in these private prisons. Who, now we're talking about, the 13th Amendment now. They can loan these people out and put them to work for little or no money. So that's what you should be looking for. They're not going to kick, because they actually have to, they can't just send folks to a country. The country has to agree to accept those people. So yeah, that's the game. Why do you think all these private prison companies throwing money at Republicans? So so yeah, that's what's up. I'm sorry folks, I did not mean to make you, like, get a bunch of adjective before bedtime, but it is what it is. Um, Last comment. Ben says immigration will be on the news for sure. The fact that they're going to try to remove tax deduction from home. Boy, isn't that sad? Like I said, I have not heard, and it may have happened. I have not heard MSNBC talking about this thing. I have not heard Republicans talking about it. I don't know why they're so asleep on this. But what these guys are doing, this is all part of their reconciliation package. All these different things are the pay fors to offset the tax cut. That's what they're up to. So be watching, subscribe to my newsletter. I have some stuff coming, hopefully in the next few days, on a variety of topics. My archives are wide open. So, you know, anything that you see there, it's all free to read. And, if you can, subscribe, become a paid subscriber, buy me a cup of coffee. I would appreciate it. I like coffee. And it is 10:30. I'm going to sign off and have a moment of zen for myself. And I appreciate everybody that showed up, all 220 of you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And until next time, be safe.